Forward. Whilst I have been a finance professional for 35 years, it's only in the past 20 years or so that I have made a conscious effort to save and invest in a structured manner. Initially, I relied on wealth managers to advise me about my investments, but soon I realized that most of them are focused on their wealth, not mine. Therefore, about 15 years ago, I set up my family office, which is staffed by hand picked chartered accountants and chartered financial analysts. However, such is the paucity of sensibly priced and structured investment products in the Indian market that even my family office has to be very selective to enable me to preserve and grow my wealth. Given this backdrop, I was more than intrigued when 4 years ago Ambit Capital's research team published its first coffee can portfolio. Whilst I was not an initial convert to the idea of buying a bunch of high quality stocks and then leaving it untouched for a decade, I soon began hearing from my friends that they were putting money into this construct. Initially, Ambit Capital offered this portfolio to private clients in an advisory arrangement, that is, the corpus was invested by the clients in their own name, but with Ambit Wealth managers helping with stock selection. Then, after Saurabh spoke, The Unusual Billionaires became a runaway hit. Within months of its publication in August 2016, Ambit Capital started offering the coffee can portfolio in a SEBI regulated PMS construct. I was one of the first investors in the PMS scheme. Since then, the coffee can portfolio has given me impressive returns with low volatility and low transaction costs. I hope it does the same for you. If the coffee can portfolio is an example of homegrown innovation in the Indian stock market, then exchange traded funds are an example of an idea imported from the US, which is finding rapid traction in India. As the Indian stock market matures, as it becomes better regulated, more institutionalized, and more competitive, it is but natural that large cap mutual fund managers will struggle to beat the market. Hence, for most investors, large cap ETFs with low fees will become a cost efficient way to participate in the growth of India's vibrant economy. Although active management of large cap stocks is no longer an assured way to generate market beating returns in the large cap Indian stocks, in the small cap space, India has several talented fund managers who consistently deliver outstanding returns by investing in upcoming companies. These fund managers are able to find companies that are not only good, that is, companies where the promoter allocates capital sensibly, but just as importantly, are also clean. That is, companies where the financial statements are a true and fair reflection of the underlying state of business. Ambit Capital's Good and Clean Fund focuses on investing in such companies, and 3 years ago, I invested in this fund. These three contrasting approaches to equity investing, ETFs for large caps, a low cost, conservative strategy like the coffee can portfolio for large and mid caps, and careful stock selection for small mid caps, should form the bedrock of any growth oriented India portfolio. To the extent that all of us need to set aside some money for a rainy day, I strongly believe that it should be done by investing in government bonds and conservatively managed liquid funds. When it comes to my rainy day corpus, life has taught me that I need to focus on liquidity and complete safety of funds. Saurabh Mukherjea, Rakshit Ranjan, and Pranab Unyal have worked in Ambit Capital for almost a decade now. I've seen them grow as finance professionals. It has been my privilege to see their wealth management philosophy evolve through intense brainstorming sessions at Ambit and then see them put their ideas to work in front of India's smartest investors. This elegantly constructed book is their attempt to share their wealth management approach with you. It uses minimal jargon and is packed with case studies that almost everyone will identify with. I hope you enjoy reading this book and make even better returns from your portfolio. Mumbai, December 2017, Ashok Vadwa, Group CEO, Ambit. List of abbreviations. Introduction. Yep. Risk comes from not knowing what you are doing. Warren Buffett. If you visit a branch of a typical private sector bank in India on Saturday afternoon, you will notice most relationship managers selling packaged financial products. That is synthetic instruments that offer exposure to more than one financial asset in packaged form, which modify that exposure compared to a direct holding in any one financial asset. However, if you listen closely to what the RM is saying, you will find that little of it's genuine advice. Most of it is promotional literature disguised as financial advice. One of the greatest examples of mis-selling by financial intermediaries in India has been unit-linked insurance plans (ULIPs). ULIPs are a push product and thus require high brokerage commission to be sold. That is, customers do not, of their own volition, buy these products unless an RM cajoles them into doing so. The fact that tenor runs into decades allows the manufacturer to implicitly charge the customer a hefty upfront brokerage commission that used to be as high as 40 to 60% of the first year premium and yet promise good absolute returns. Hallan, Sane, and Thomas estimated that Indian investors had lost more than rupees 1.5 lakh crores, approximately 23 billion US dollars, yes, billion, on these products because of lapsing. This was because investors are not informed about the compulsory investment required in subsequent years. This allowed insurance companies to confiscate investors' funds when they did not make the payments in the subsequent years. Unfortunately, such mis-selling is not just a thing of the past, it continues to characterize the financial services landscape in India. A diligent investor seeks to avoid getting trapped in such mis-selling by reading up on his own. However, a visit to any good bookshop shows that finding a good book on investing in the Indian context is not an easy task. Though there is no shortage of great books by global gurus that can inform the Indian investor about how to build his investment portfolio, the relevance of the global literature to India becomes limited because of a combination of three factors. Firstly, there is an overwhelming dominance of physical investments like gold and real estate in most Indian households' portfolios. A recent RBI committee opined that 88% of an Indian investor's wealth is in gold and real estate, a dominance not seen in any other large economy of the world. Moreover, issues around illiquidity, emotional connect, and unfavorable capital gains taxation makes it harder for investors to move away from such existing physical investments. Secondly, the culture of stock market investments in India is only 2 decades old, with the regulatory supervision of the Indian capital markets still evolving and given the irregular quality of financial reporting by Indian companies, it is difficult for an average investor to make an informed decision. Thirdly, Thirdly, unlike the stock markets in some developed countries, the Indian stock market has very few great companies that sustain leadership over long periods of time. This point is demonstrated clearly through the following analysis from Ambit Capital's research. The average probability of a sector leader remaining a sector leader 5 years later is only 15%, implying that 85% of BSE 500 companies slide towards mediocrity. In fact, average probability of a great company becoming a sector laggard 5 years later is 25%. Even the Nifty churns by around 50% or so every decade, as compared to around 25% for developed markets and around 30 to 40% in other major emerging markets. Furthermore, the tendency for large successful companies to slide down the market cap spectrum is to the Nifty, not confined to the Nifty. A guide to portfolio construction and investment in India needs to take heed of these peculiarities. This book aims to be such a guide. This book can be read in two ways. An affluent professional or entrepreneur should read it chapter by chapter, and his or her portfolio should be spread across both equities and bonds. Of particular relevance for such a reader are Chapter 1, Mr. Talwar's Uncertain Future, Chapter 7, Pulling it all together, and Chapter 8, Designing Your Own Financial Plan. Alternatively, someone who seeks more specific guidance on how to build a high quality equity portfolio should carefully read Chapter 2, Coffee Can Investing. Chapter 5, Small is Beautiful. Chapter 6, How Patience and Quality Intertwine. And Appendix 1 to see how the coffee can portfolio works. Chapter 1, Mr. Talwar's Uncertain Future. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Ancient Chinese saying. An evening of celebration and reflection. Even by the standards of North India, it was an unusually hot June evening with the mercury hovering at 42 degrees Celsius. As in the norm during the evening rush hour, all roads leading away from Noida were gridlocked with bumper to bumper traffic. However, in flat number 901 of Aviral Housing Society, located just 5 minutes off the Delhi Agra Expressway, the Talwar household was celebrating a special evening. Yogesh Talwar became Yogesh Talwar beamed happily at the small gathering that had come together to celebrate his son's success in the class 12 board exams. Ronit had scored 93% and stood third in his class. It was time to celebrate as all the relatives commented on what a great future awaited Ronit. As immortalized in the classic 19, as immortalized in the classic 1967 movie The Graduate, relatives and family friends congratulated the young man and told him what they thought he should do with his life. Dustin Hoffman plays a graduate in a super hit movie that made him star, earned him his first Oscar nomination, and captured the spirit of that remarkable decade. Mr. Talwar felt a little uneasy about the happy predictions for his son. In the midst of the hubbub, he could sense that something was not right, but he could not pinpoint the reasons for his disquiet. Once the guests were gone, he sat in the balcony with his favorite single malt and let his mind drift over his own career. As he looked out towards the sea of skyscrapers, most of them half completed, buildings abandoned by the real estate developers that is Greater Noida, Mr. Talwar's mind retraced the steps of his distinguished corporate career. He had done well academically after completing his undergraduate degree in engineering from the highly rated Regional Engineering College in Telangana's Warangal, formerly Andhra Pradesh. He had gone on to finish his studies at a reputed business school, Management Development Institute (MDI) in Gurgaon. His MBA was his MBA was MDI. His MBA from MDI, coupled with a solid academic record, had helped Yogesh Talwar get a good job with a leading multinational company with an attractive salary of 2 lakh rupees per annum. He had stars in his eyes and the world was his to conquer. That was 1990, but it seemed like yesterday. The years had flown by since then, but even in the tumult of post 1991 India, Mr. Talwar had broadly done the right things. To begin with, he had married a smart girl. Kusum was a teacher at a private school in Noida. Kusum and Yogesh's children, Akanksha and Ronit, were bright, hardworking, and well behaved. Akanksha was pursuing a postgraduate degree in biotechnology in Bangalore, and Ronit was awaiting his engineering entrance exam results. Mr. Talwar had a settled life, and yet he felt deeply unsettled. Over the years, especially in the last 4 to 5 years, he had started feeling like an underachiever despite working hard over his 25-year corporate career. When he had started working, he told himself that he would retire at the age of 40. That 40 had become 45, and now here he was at 50 years of age. And yet, despite all the hard work, Mr. Talwar felt almost as financially insecure as he was when he graduated from the business school. He had started working in 1990 just as India was about to open its door to liberalization. It was a good time to work with a private firm. His career had progressed better compared to some of his friends who had joined public sector companies. The yearly increments were great too. For the first few years, the young Yogesh never needed to save. He spent his income on a bike, on travel, and on social outings. He was a generous man who stood by his friends, but most of the loans he gave to them never came back. He got married in 1995 at the age of 28, and that did not change his lifestyle much. It was only when Akanksha was born in 1996 that Kusum and he realized the need to build a financial buffer. Mr. Talwar booked his first fixed deposit (FD) within a few days of Akanksha's birth. Over the years, FDs remained his preferred investment. The Talwars also kept buying gold whenever possible as jewelry for Kusum. Gold not only conformed to the traditional wisdom about it being a reliable store of value, but would also come handy when it was time for Akanksha to get married. Some of his colleagues would invest in stocks, but between 1991 and 2004, the Indian stock market was characterized by regular share price rigging scams, and Mr. Talwar saw investors in stocks as punters. Like most well educated families in India, he saw the stock market as an unknown area of darkness. In fact, he had seen most of his friends losing significant amounts of money every now and then in the stock market. In 1999, Mr. Talwar bought his first flat in Noida. This was more on the insistence of his parents, who had scored a hat trick by pushing him into the third big decision of his life: marriage, children, and now the house. It was a matter of pride for them that their son owned a house at 32 years of age because they were only able to afford it in their 50s. The house was purchased using a home loan. In those days, interest rates were as high as 13 to 14%. The monthly installment forced the Talwars to live a hand to mouth existence for years. They had to break their FDs to buy the house. As a result, through their 30s, all their savings were invested in real estate. Thankfully, interest rates came down over the years and Mr. Talwar's salary increased. As the burden for the monthly installments eased, the family breathed easier. It allowed the Talwars to start saving again and they turned to their old friend fixed deposits. But this time, Mr. Talwar was a little more aggressive. In the post 2000 India, he bought stocks. This was based on the collective wisdom of a small group of stock investors in his office. In those days, stock investing meant trading. There was no concept of holding a stock for long term. One bought a stock, watched it like a hawk, and sold it once the price went up. Being able to exit a stock at high point was considered an art and gave one bragging rights in the office. Mr. Talwar loved the highs of stock investing. However, for reasons he could not understand, his portfolio did not grow much. The high brokerage, which is the commission charged by the broker, and the frequent churn in the Mr. Talwar's portfolio, driven as it was by office gossip, meant that it was the broker who made all the money. The broker used to be in excess of 1% of the transaction value in those days. Then came the bull run. While his stock portfolio was meager, the value of his house appreciated by leaps and bounds as both equity and real estate prices increased multifold in that period. But this did not mean much in terms of cash flows as he was staying in the house and had no intention of selling it. But it felt good to be a crorepati. Like some of his wealthier friends, he also started lending funds to real estate builders through a private network hidden from the taxman. At 2.5% per month interest, it beat any other investment Mr. Talwar had made in his life, and he kicked himself for not doing this earlier. The money always came back, and there were always more builders to lend to. Mr. Talwar loved real estate as an asset class. All around the country, people were buying property and getting richer. He did not want to miss out. The willingness of the banks to grant home loans of up to 90% of the property value meant that an appreciation of 50% in the value of the property, which as per Mr. Talwar was a given, was actually a 500% return on investment. So, other than the flat he lived in a overall housing society, he booked another flat in a luxury high-rise complex called Empire Apartments that was under construction in Noida. The National Capital Region was witnessing a boom. One could actually see the growth as the high rises in Noida and Gurgaon reached for the sky. Mr. Talwar was now hopeful. Finally, he thought India had stopped whining and started shining. One day, the gravy train stopped. First came the stock market crash of 2008. Between January and November of 2008, when the Nifty fell 55%, the crash almost entirely wiped out Mr. Talwar's stock portfolio since most of the stocks were speculative investments made on the basis of tips from colleagues and his stockbrokers. However, he remained optimistic as most of his wealth was invested in real estate. In fact, after seeing the stock market sink, Mr. Talwar was completely convinced that about the infallibility of the Indian real estate. After all, as his friend Mr. Kalra put it, a house was a real asset bound to go up in value in a country with a housing shortage, where stocks are only pieces of paper with no certain value. Mr. Talwar swore never to invest in stocks and doubled down on real estate in the form of paying the next installment of the flat he had booked in Empire Apartments. However, soon the real estate engine too started sputtering. The first signs of the plateauing of house prices in 2013. Indian investors had seen property prices going up almost on a monthly basis, and a continuous price appreciation was taken for granted. While the stagnation in prices upset Mr. Talwar, he was not alarmed as yet, as the press said that this was just a temporary demand slowdown. The real estate pundits, that is, the property developers and property brokers, who were featured on the financial news channels, said that it was a matter of time before house prices picked up again. Unfortunately, the slowdown in demand continued from 2013 to 2017, and prices continued correcting in some form or the other. The real estate developers started defaulting on loans from 2015 as they ran out of customers who would pay for their overpriced flats. Mr. Talwar was now dealt with a double blow. The money that he had lent to the builders was stuck, and so was the flat that he had booked in Empire Apartments. The flat, which was supposed to be delivered in 3 years, was now in its sixth year of construction and still a long way from completion. The builder had drawn down more than 95% of the price of the flat and still did not have money to finish the project. Unfortunately, there were scores of such cases in Noida. Apart from a long court battle with the builder, which he was pursuing with his fellow house buyers, there was nothing else that Mr. Talwar could do. Thus, his dalliance was with the stock market and real estate had ended in several financial reverses, even as the clock ticked down on his career. He poured himself another peg and switched on the TV. A one-day international match that India had won against Pakistan 5 years ago was being telecast, but Mr. Talwar's mind was somewhere else. He was 50 years old now and had another 10 years of working life ahead of him. Apart from his investment in property, he had some savings in FDs and in gold. He had also taken a few insurance policies whose worth he never got around to assessing fully. Assuming that after his retirement he and Qasim lived for another 30 years, they would need at least 30 lakh rupees per annum post tax to enjoy a comfortable life. An amount of 30 lakh rupees per annum over 30 years was a lot of money. I need at least 9 crores. Where will I get that sort of money? Thought Mr. Talwar. Like the Indian innings on TV, his career was also entering into final 10 overs and he had to make it count. How could he make the most of it? The Indian team had held Mahendra Singh Dhoni back for the big hits in the slog overs. Who would bat for Mr. Talwar in the slog overs of his career? The question kept troubling him. Just as he was about to pour himself another peg, Kusum entered the room and said, "Shouldn't we call it a day? Sitting alone in the dark with a glass of scotch is not going to help. Let's get some sleep and have a chat over a hot cup of coffee tomorrow morning." Mr. Talwar sighed. His wife had always been a more level headed person than him. Mr. Talwar's life chart, a typical senior executive's life chart. Mr. Singhvi has the same trouble as Mr. Talwar but with more zeros. Noida is not just home to thousands of successful executives like Mr. Talwar but also houses close to 2,500 manufacturing businesses. Among the 700 odd textile firms in Noida, Mukesh Sanghvi's firm was one of the oldest. The Sanghvi family had run textile plants for generations. While their pot of wealth had grown over the generations, their business was now facing acute competition from Bangladesh, where wages are a third of what they are in India. On top of that, the Sanghvi family was dealing with unfavorable labor and tax regulations. The firm had also taken on a lot of debt lately, and the Sanghvis, two brothers and a sister, had decided to put the business into liquidation. Each sibling wants to pursue a new line of business or profession, but Mukesh Sanghvi was clear that at 55 years of age, he wanted to take it easy and live off his accumulated wealth. It was by no means meager. According to a rough estimate, he had some 25 crore rupees spread across assets like residential and commercial properties, gold, FDs, stocks, and a significant amount of cash he would receive from the liquidation. However, he was aware that his existing lifestyle meant that he would require a very large annual surplus to support it. He had two sons and a daughter. The oldest, Sujay, was 25 years old and worked as a manager in Mr. Sanghvi's friend pharmaceutical firm. The other two children, Nirmesh, aged 23, and Komal, aged 20, were studying in the US and UK respectively. The family liked the good things in life. They went for three overseas holidays every year and changed their luxury German cars every other year. Given that Mr. Sanghvi had let go of the business, he was nervous and unsure about whether his corpus would be enough to meet his family's requirements. After all, family's annual financial outgo was 1.5 to 2 crore, and he had to sustain that for another 30 years. He needed a corpus of at least 50 crores rupees. So far, the sole source of income for Mr. Sanghvi was the dividends he received from the company and the large salary he drew as the firm's director. His wife had bought a lot of jewelry over the years and they had a few commercial properties. He was very active in the local Hindi circuit, where people lent each other unsecured loans for as much as 25% per annum on an annualized basis without declaring anything to the taxman. Over the years, Mr. Sanghvi had had multiple tariffs with the stock market. He was a punter by nature and liked making aggressive bets. In fact, Mr. Sanghvi dealt in the futures and option market and took leverage position in stocks. At the peak of the bull cycle in January 2008, he was worth 150 crore rupees. But by November 2008, his net worth had fallen to as much that he was teetering on the brink of bankruptcy, all thanks to the margin calls that his broker had made on him. He had sworn to never make the mistake again and hence missed out on the 145% rally in the Nifty between March 2009 and November 2010. Seeing his friends make money over that period had made Mr. Sanghvi envious. So when Narendra Modi took over as Prime Minister of India in May 2014, Mr. Sanghvi decided it was high time that he re-entered the markets. That was then. Now with the business liquidated and the dividends gone, Mr. Sanghvi was scratching his head to figure out how to finance the rest of his retirement, his family's lifestyle and his children's education on a paltry corpus of rupees 25 crore. Mr. Sanghvi's life chart, a typical small business owner's lifeline. Enter the advisor, Nikhil. Over steaming cups of masala chai, poha, and fruits the next morning, Kusum understood what was worrying her husband. She told him that their neighbors, the Krishnans, had found it useful to see a financial advisor from a wealth management firm. She called the Krishnans over the breakfast and they pointed the talwars towards Nikhil Banerjee, a senior relationship manager with a reputed wealth management firm. When Nikhil came to meet Mr. Talwar, he carried a laptop with a financial planning software package. The meeting lasted more than 3 hours, and the results were a revelation for Mr. Talwar. Nikhil told Mr. Talwar that the key was to quantify everything since reality is different from perception and hard numbers help differentiate one from another. The first thing they did together was to quantify the Talwar's net worth. Exhibit 1, Mr. Talwar's personal balance sheet. House number one, 20 value in rupee lakhs, remarks. House number one, 250 lakhs, primary residence in Noida. House number two, 150 lakhs, flat booked in Empire Apartments. Loan made to developers 85 lakhs, only 50% probability of this being repaid. Gold 60 lakhs, jewelry used by Mrs. Salwa. Fixed deposits 25 lakhs, insurance sum assured 12 lakhs across 7 policies. Cash 5 lakhs, stock 5 lakhs, total 592 lakhs of assets. Liabilities: loan for house number 2, 130 lakhs, loan taken at 9.5%. Car loan, 11 lakhs, loan taken at 12%. Total liabilities, 141 lakhs. Net assets, 451 lakhs. That is total assets minus total liabilities. Next, they calculated the returns his portfolio had generated over the past 27 years. They segmented the numbers methodically so that Mr. Talwar could see the returns that each asset class generated for him. The results stunned Mr. Talwar. On a weighted average basis, he had earned a return of only 4% per annum over his 27 years.